Many of us chocolate lovers struggle saying no to a brownie, particularly if it's fudgy. This brownie recipe I'm sharing today is gluten-free and can be vegan. I've been told by non-gluten eaters that it is surprisingly good. It is quite indulgent, easier on the gut, and adds a nuanced spice you might not expect. Chili peppers and chocolate have been a sought-out, pleasing couple for many years now. Let's add it to brownies and see what happens. The two secret ingredients in this recipe are in the title. Who would have thought that chili peppers and black beans could make a great sweet dessert? Well, they do. Let's check it out. For the ingredients, you'll need a can of black beans, old-fashioned or quick cooking oats, cocoa powder, salt, baking powder, cayenne pepper powder, brown sugar, maple syrup, coconut oil, vanilla extract, chocolate chips, and a chili pepper dark chocolate bar like Lindt, which is not vegan, but you could use a vegan version. I love this recipe because it's super chocolatey without all of the heavy ingredients, and you don't feel crummy after you eat one of these. It would go great as a dessert after a Mexican-themed meal. This recipe is very easy to make and comes together very quickly. So go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees, and we're going to grease, like I just did, an 8 by 8 inch pan, and then I'm going to add a piece of parchment paper to mine. I make these many times without parchment paper, but they sort of stick to the pan a little bit even when the pan is greased because these are really fudgy. So sometimes I like to just throw in a sheet of parchment paper on top of the grease just so that the grease will stick to the paper and the paper will sit flush and you don't have any weird creases in your brownie as if you were to crease the paper and then open up and put it back in the pan, which you could do, but then you're gonna have creases in your brownies. Totally up to you. And then I just cut the four corners with scissors down to the base of the pan and trim off the flaps, and then you've got this piece of paper that sits nicely in the pan. We're just gonna set that aside. So in a small bowl, I'm adding 60 grams, which is a quarter of a cup of coconut oil. I prefer to use the cold pressed unrefined that looks like shortening because unrefined has a little bit more coconut flavor. If you don't want the coconut flavor, just buy the refined version and it won't be as strong. I'm gonna heat my coconut oil in the microwave for 30 seconds or until it's just melted. If you have a couple of little pieces of coconut that haven't completely melted, just take a few moments and stir it and it will melt with the warmer melted portion of the coconut oil. And as you can see now, mine are all melted, so I'm just gonna set that aside. You can do pretty much this entire recipe in your food processor. It's that simple. So to a large food processor, we're gonna add everything except for the chocolate pieces and the chili chocolate. We're gonna add first, you need to rinse and drain your beans. This is 425 grams, which is one 15-ounce can. 48 grams, which is a half a cup of old-fashioned or quick cooking oats. Then we're gonna add 10 grams, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. I'm gonna add 1 gram, a quarter of a teaspoon of salt, 2 grams, a half of a teaspoon of baking powder. And for that spicy kick, minor spicy kick, I say, 1 gram, which is a quarter of a teaspoon of ground cayenne pepper. And now for the sugar and the fat. 28 grams, which is 2 tablespoons packed of brown sugar. You can increase the maple syrup by 2 tablespoons if you aren't allowed or can't eat brown sugar, or you don't even have it. That's okay too. And then we're gonna add 79 milliliters, which is a third of a cup of maple syrup. You could use honey or a combination of both maple syrup and honey. I've done both. We're gonna add the melted coconut oil. And finally, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Okay, it's time to give it a whirl and get it all mixed up. We are going to turn the machine on and we're going to blend this until smooth. You can stop periodically and scrape down the sides of the bowl just to ensure the ingredients on the edges are mixed in well. So you may want to let your machine run for about 2 minutes. And you're gonna still see probably a few small chunks of oats. Other than the oats, you should pretty much have a smooth consistency. Now we wanna add our chocolate chunks. 107 grams, which is 2/3 of a cup of chocolate chips. And I don't wanna break these down necessarily. I'm just going to pulse them a couple of times to ensure that the chips are just blended in with the batter. So just about 5 or 6 times. And that's about all you need. And then you can just put your spoon in there if you want to, your spatula, and then just give it a little extra stir. That's good enough. Okay, and now we're just gonna scoop the mixture into our prepared pan. So notice how thick it is, just like that. It looks like a brownie mixture. And we don't have any flour or eggs in here. Once you have most of your batter in your pan, just use a spoon or spatula and then just smooth it out so that it covers the entire bottom of the pan. And you want to smooth out the top as well. Since these are Mexican chili pepper brownies, we want to add a little bit more spice to it. So we're just going to add a little bit of chili pepper chocolate shavings to the top. Okay, so you can see how battered. Try to smooth it out as much as you can on the top. Then I'm going to use 2 to 4 squares of shaved chili pepper chocolate. This bar is not vegan. It does have milk in it. So if you are vegan, you can either find a vegan version of this, or if you know what you like, or you could just use chocolate chips and just sprinkle them over the top and just go with the spice that's already in the brownie batter. And you're going to get brownie batter spice, enough of it, that you'll be able to taste it without the extra on the top. If you don't have a grater like this, then you could just chop your chocolate on a board and then just place the chopped pieces on the batter. Put as little or as much as you want. I like chocolate, so I'm probably going to use most of this. All right, I'm happy with that. That's supposed to 4 squares. We're going to place the brownies in the oven and bake for 15 to 18 minutes. You want the center to be set and the brownie edges to begin to pull away. All done, hot and ready to cool. Don't those look just gorgeous? I love the grated chocolate on top. It gives it such texture. The brownies look incredibly rich, gooey, yummy, and super tasty. Since these brownies do not have flour, they are meant to be fudgy. They need to cool to set before cutting into them. So I'm going to allow them to cool for at least 10 minutes before trying to cut into them. However, they may still look a bit undercooked, but that doesn't mean they are. You could just place them in the fridge for several hours to overnight so that they firm up and they'll be perfect to cut into later. Notice the brownies didn't rise much. They have cooled. It's just been a few hours, not too long. They are quite dense. The chocolate on top adds visual texture. I love the little shavings. It just looks like a fancy topped brownie. We didn't have to add anything else, just some slivered chocolate. That's it. So of course, baking them in the pan in paper, like we did here, makes it easy to lift out. So you could, at this point, just lift out the brownies like that. Notice how easily that happened. And then you can get a better view of just how thin these really are. They're not that thick at all. You can, of course, leave them in the pan and cut them as you would like. You can get anywhere from 9 to 12 brownie squares out of this pan. I usually like to cut a third, so I have thirds, and then thirds that way, and that gives me 9 brownies. So let's try that. Cut our first one. Very fudgy. So they cut pretty easily. Let's see if we can get the first one out. Oop, it's falling off there. Notice how fudgy they are? They look like a regular brownie, don't they? And then we have no flour. Remember, this is black beans and oats. And in some cases, you might be able to spot a few little oat pieces, but because we blended it so well and for so long, they really aren't that visible. They just look like a standard chocolate brownie. They slide right off. You want to store these in the refrigerator. That way they will firm up and stay firm and won't melt as they sit on the counter. And they won't melt necessarily, but you just want them to stay firm in the refrigerator is the best place to store these. You can imagine serving this with some cream or ice cream to balance out the sweet chocolate flavoring. If you look at the bottom too, notice they're just nice, cohesive top and bottom brownie. They're handheld, so even though they're fudgy, they're not going to melt in your hands. So there you are, are Mexican chili pepper, black bean, fudgy brownies. Gluten-free and vegan if you use vegan chocolate. These gluten-free fudgy brownies are quite different from the traditional version in ingredients, but not so different in taste. Surprisingly, you can't even taste the black beans. After all, the beans provide health benefits and keep you regular. Test a batch of these and don't tell your family and friends what's in them and see if they can guess. Maybe this would be a great little Halloween trick for them. Try making these for Halloween. That might be fun. They shouldn't detect the beans, but they might be able to pick up on a little spice. Chili pepper, chocolate, black beans, and sugar surprisingly complement each other very well in producing a satisfying yet somewhat allergy-friendly and guilt-free dessert. Don't knock it until you try it. Many friends and family love these brownies when I've made them for them, and your chocolate-loving, gluten-free friends will sing your praises. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing. Until next time, bake a pan of brownies, add a little bit of spice, and go bake the world.